In this video, we're looking at subroutines. Subroutines include procedures and functions. We're going to look at the differences between them, and we're going to look at examples about how we can use them to organize our code better and reuse it when we want to. A subroutine is just a generic word for procedures and for functions. When we design a procedure or a function, it's usually to do a specific task, but what's really good about it is that you can reuse that code whenever you want. For the written part of paper 2, especially in section A, they can ask you what the difference between a function and a procedure is. You will have to be able to describe it for your section A, but you'll also have to be able to perform it or write it down for your section B. So quite simply, a procedure does not return any value. And it'll become clear what we mean by that when we look at our example. But it's still designed to do something, so it's like a section of code that's got a specific task and it will be carried out, but at the end of it, it doesn't return any information. Whereas a function, on the other hand, is another section of code that we can use and we can call. But what's important about this one is that it does return data at the end of it. And we've got a keyword for that, which is return. And we're going to look at that example as well in Python. So we're going to start with a procedure. And we've got another keyword that we're going to look at today to do a procedure or a function. And at the beginning of it, we're going to write the word def, D-E-F. You'll notice that this one's changed to orange. And then afterwards, when you type the name of whatever you want your procedure to be called, it's going to change to blue. Python syntax means that we need to put an open close brackets at this point and then a colon at the end of it. And we're quite familiar that if we do a colon, when we press enter, it's automatically going to indent, which means that anything that's indented is going to be a part of our procedure. And quite simply in this one, it's going to be a welcome message. We've got print, so we can display some information, and it's going to display the word hello. Now, because all of this is in the section of code here, this block of code that we've named welcome, this is known as local. This can only happen when this section of code is being run. Now, if you want to activate that section of code, you'll have to call it, and then it will run that bit of code. So the correct term, like I said, is call. And to call a procedure, we just need to name it. So we're going to write welcome in this part underneath the code, open close brackets. What that will do, it will call this procedure, so it will then run what's inside it. Let's see it working. So we're going to run our code, and you'll see it will just say hello. So just to recap, this is the procedure here. It doesn't return any information, it just displays the message hello in a string because we've used print, and to call that section of code, we've used welcome. You can have as many procedures as you want, and then you can call it in whatever you want by doing something like this. We've put this in a global section, but they can also be called from inside another procedure as well. Now, there's quite a lot of keywords that we're going to use in this one, so get yourselves ready. This is an example of a function. Now, I mentioned earlier, the thing that makes it a function is that it returns information. And you can see at the bottom of this one, we've got return area. So that keyword return is what's going to make this a function. So we've got a full understanding of this. Let's have a look at this line by line. To begin with, we're going to make our function by using def at the beginning of it. We've named this section get area, this block of code. And then inside the brackets this time, we've actually got two words in there. We've got width and height. These are known as parameters. Your parameters will wait for information to be passed to them so it can be used within the function. This function is going to perform an action. We've got a variable called area, and it's going to do whatever width is multiplied by the height. And then at the end of it, once it's calculated that, it will return that area, and it's going to put it inside a variable that we've got here called answer. So this line of code is really important because we've got our variable answer, and then it's going to activate our function get area, and then you can see we've got our numbers that we're going to pass to it that it can use. So we've got the number 5 or integer 5, and then we've got the integer 10 as well. Now, because these are going to get passed into the function, these are called arguments. So we've got 5 as an argument, we've got 10 as an argument. They're going to get passed into width and height. So the 5 and 10 can then be used here and here, and then that information will be passed back using return, and at the end of it, it's going to display the answer by using print. Let's see if it works. So once we've run our code, you can see it's displayed 50, which 5 multiplied by 10 is 50. So it's done this calculation within the function, and then it's returned the information back into this variable, which we can then use here. So all of this information was part of the function, which was local, but once we returned the information, it went into this variable, which is global because it's not inside a function. So then I can use it anywhere in my code because I've actually stored that information now, which is why I was able to then display it using this print statement, which is where answer is. I want to show you how we can use a couple of different techniques that we've looked at in the past and how we can incorporate those into functions and procedures into like a proper little program. So let's have a look at this line by line. At the very top is the global part of it. I've got import random. That's because I want to be able to produce some random numbers. I've then got a function which is called guess game. And as a parameter, I've got secret number, which means I'm going to pass some information into this parameter so we can do this part of the code. I knew it was a function because it's got return in it. I've then got a separate section of code, which is just a procedure that I've called main, like the main part of my program. This is a procedure because it doesn't return any information. As part of my global part of my code at the bottom, I've got main open close brackets. So when I run this code, the first section of code that's going to be run is the main section. It will then produce a random number using random.randint between 1 and 10. And I've got a variable called results, and then I'm going to activate the function guess game. Now at the moment, I don't know what random number has been produced, but it was stored in X. So I'm going to pass that argument up into this parameter because I've put it inside these brackets here. And at this point, this part of my code is going to run, and it's going to display the message, guess what number I'm thinking of. At that point, we've just used a regular input, and it says, enter a number between 1 to 10. So the user will then type in a number and press enter, and it will return whatever their guess is. Now it stores that in the result because that's what we originally set out to do when we sent that information in an argument over to guess game. Now their guess at that point was a string because we just used input. So what I've done down here is a simple if statement, and I've converted it by using casting into an integer. And it's going to say whatever that result was, it's going to get compared to X, the original number that was produced. So if it's the same as X, you got it correct. But if not, it will say unlucky, the number was, and then display the results. Let's run this code and see what happens. So guess what number I'm thinking of, enter between 1 to 10. I'm going to go with 6, best number. Press enter. Unlucky, the number was 4. That is unlucky. Let's run it one more time, see if we get it. Enter between 1 to 10, 3. Unlucky, the number was 9. I could be here for ages. So just to recap, functions and procedures are a really good way of organizing your code. You can reuse any section as many times as you want. And for your exam, we need to know the difference between the local and global part of our code, and the difference between a function and procedure, which is that function returns information, your procedure doesn't. And that's it for this one. I'll see you next time.